Okay, so this is the second part of the lesson that I started earlier. Just a couple more things that I wanted to add to really finish this lesson up and to give you some examples on how rhetoric works around the world and online. Make sure, of course, to watch the first part before going on to this one as I'm just continuing on. So let's get into it. First thing I want to go into is visual rhetoric here. And visual rhetoric, it's just rhetoric seen visually. No big epiphany there. As the list says here, it's just using images as argument, using certain elements of page, using certain colors, fonts, existing images, videos, whatever, to visually persuade you, to visually connect with you, just like regular rhetoric, right? So let's go through some examples I have here already. Here is our first example. This is Obama's hope poster from his 2008 election. Normally, of course, I would ask the class, like, what do you see here? But I will just kind of explain to you why I think this is visual rhetoric and why it's very, at least it's very convincing, especially at the time. So first, of course, we have the colors, red, white, and blue. Should be pretty important as this is an election for the United States, not just any country, but our country. So we have our colors represented here. And then the little button here just to further emphasize that point. The other obvious thing, of course, is the huge hope word you see here, just to let you know that's what he's bringing to this presidency, at least his tenure as president. We also, of course, get his look. What exactly is he seeing over there, right? We're not sure. That's not for us to know, but that's kind of what we want to know, right? That's the idea. And at the end of the day, what do you think this poster is trying to make you do? Because here's the thing. This image here, it's making an argument, much like a piece of paper would make, right? Much like a book would make, right? A report or whatever. This visual rhetoric here is making an argument. So what kind of argument do you think it's making? And think about the time this was released. In 2008, elections were going on. What do you think this is trying to get you to do? To vote for him, right? Yeah, this is just trying to get you to vote for Obama in 2008. And that's the idea. That's the argument. And they do that through this image here, through the use of color, the way he positions himself, the letter hope. Not the letter, but the word hope. And of course, everything combined to make that argument. What do we have here? Take a close look at this. So, first we have, of course, the big symbols. Windows and Apple, right? And because of the position here, we can see that this Apple is supposed to be this car, and this Windows idea is supposed to be this car, right? And you can see multiple things are going on. At the end of the day, let's start with the argument, right? The argument being here that according to this, Mac or Apple machines are better than Windows-based machines, right? And how do they do this? Well, for one, look at the mechanic here, right? This guy looks happy, fine, like nothing's going on. This guy looks super stressed, right? Like he has a lot of work ahead of him and he doesn't know where to start. That's a good indicator of how the machines work, right? Then we have just the color of the cars, right? Blue and white compared to this beige, yellowish color, right? Not the best color used for this car. Also, look at the shape of the car. This car looks like it's from the 1980s, right? Something old that some of you might have received as a first car to drive. And this one looks like a car of the future. It's smoothed out. Looks very neat. Look at the headlights here compared to this headlights here, right? It just looks a lot sleeker compared to this one, right? This one looks all boxy and stuff. And then, of course, the engine here, simple, on, off. Basic, right? It's on or it's off, no big deal. Over here, a huge mess of wires, right, and tubes, or whatever kind of a mess got going on there. We can almost feel the exact same way this guy feels just looking at this, right? And yeah, taking all those visual aspects together, we get the idea or the argument that Mac is better than Windows just by this visual metaphor. And that's how it works. It's quick, right? It's just you get it instantly. It's not like it's something you had to read to understand. But here's the thing, of course. With this, it's not very logical, right? A Mac isn't a car. But the idea, this metaphor that they're using here or analogy you could say, to connect it with a Mac is enough to give you that argument. But again, it's not logical. They're not giving you statistics. I'm not saying Mac is better because it has more CPU or GPU or whatever you want to say, and Windows is worse because it's always crashing or whatever they want to make a claim, right? They're just giving you an emotional metaphor, right? It might even make you laugh a little bit, right? Or you might agree or disagree, whatever the case is during your background. But you can see that here. Now, just something I want to mention here real quick before we move on. How about if we change these logos, right? Instead of it being the Apple here and, of course, the Windows logo here, let's switch that up. What if instead of these logos, we had, I don't know, Pepsi here and Coca-Cola here? Would this image still work? Would it still give you the same type of argument? It would, but it wouldn't make as much sense, right? For some reason, right? And Coke or Pepsi here doesn't quite connect well with the car, and Coke doesn't connect well with this car. It doesn't work the same way. It just breaks the decorum here, right? So here we would have a food item. It doesn't even matter what it is, right? It could be Burger King, it could be Pepsi, like I said, whatever. But it doesn't work as well. Even though Apple is not a car at all, right? It still works because it's some form of technology. But with food, it just doesn't make quite as much sense. That metaphor, that analogy doesn't quite connect as well. So that's why decorum is important. You need to know what the right situation is to use to make sure you make a good, clear argument. And in this case, this works because they're, even though a computer is not a car, there might be computers in cars, but they're not necessarily the same thing, right? They work together because they're technology. They're like a machine. Think of it that way, right? They're both machines, so you can like machines. But a food item with a car, not so much. All right, moving on. What do we have here? So here's the thing when it comes to America, I've noticed a lot, is that we really like to sexualize food. And what you have here is a sandwich that's made into a phallic symbol. And it happens all the time. Not necessarily a phallic symbol, but a sexualizing of food, right? I have no idea what it is, the fascination with sex and food, but that's the thing that you get a lot with the US. And you see a lot of this stuff that's just not, I don't know about you guys, but let's put it this way. When I want to eat something, I really don't want to think about a phallic symbol. And yet, this is what we got, right? So look at the image you get here, right? A woman on the left, mouth agape, sandwich almost being stuffed into her face, right? The words here, it just tastes better, it'll blow your mind, BK Super 7-incher. It's just full of sexual images, right? Or at least it's what it's trying to get to you. And this is just one I found online, just a random, I guess, a clip of a magazine ad. But there's other ads like this. They're just notorious. I think Carl's Jr., they're notorious in that, right? Showing bikini models with huge burgers. And I have no idea why that's supposed to appeal to people, but in a sense, it might. And again, though, it's visual rhetoric. It's all it is. And it's used in this way to supposedly convince you to go and buy this meal here with this sandwich. And again, how well it appeals to you or not depends on how well they're able to persuade you here. Now, what would happen if we took this image here and instead of having a woman, let's put a man there? Would this be just as accepted? Because what I hear a lot with this is that, oh, this is just a funny little thing, whatever, it's no big deal. But what would happen if it's a man? Would anything change? Would everybody still be blasé about it and just be like, oh, it's fine, whatever? It's hard to say, right? But I have a feeling that people they would ask them to take this down immediately if all of a sudden you put a man's face there. And honestly, they're both just as bad, man or woman's face. There's no reason for this to exist, right? But for some reason, put a man's face there and all of a sudden it becomes a problem. As this, although it's just as problematic. No big issue, right? It's just one other thing. Anyways, another example of visual rhetoric. Here's another one. Pretty simple. Just a anti-smoking ad, right? And this one's actually straight to the point. Again, you get it immediately. We have here a young man. So here's the thing. This is telling us the audience that they're trying to get to, right? They're not looking for 40-year-olds or middle-aged men or middle-aged women. They're just looking at youth, right? People who are starting to might start getting into smoking. So they're trying to warn them as soon as possible. Maybe that's the audience that they want to cater to the most. Either way, it's easy to see. We have a literal smoking gun here, but the gun, of course, is also pointing at the smoker's head. The implication giving that smoking will kill you. And of course, black background, white foreground makes it stick out even further. So there's another argument being made here, of course. Don't smoke. It'll eventually kill you if it doesn't already. Here's another one. This one is just showing how, well, I guess you could say it is a anti-deforestation ad, right? And it's showing here how the forest is likened to lungs, right? So here's the lungs, pretty easy to see. But then you see something go down here, right? And what does this kind of remind you of? To me, it's just cancer, right? Cancer that's taking over the lungs. And the cancer in this case is humans. Oh, surprise, right? But that's the idea, right? That's why we need to stop deforestation, because it's going to hurt our oxygen supply, which is not really the case, but you get that gist, right? That it's bad, and that's the idea. And again, with all of these, just like with this guy, these are all emotionally based. Nothing here is specifically logical, and credibility depends, of course, on the organization that's made it, but it's really all pathocentric, right? And it has decorum set in, and it has kairos. Timing might be a good important thing to have with these, but there's no real logical argument as of yet. It's just all emotionally based to get you to follow whatever argument they're trying to make. One last thing, of course, is asking you, is music rhetorical? And the short answer is yes, of course it is. The music itself can be rhetorical, or the music can be used in a rhetorical way to elicit emotion, right? So here's some music examples. I think I'm only going to show you just one because I don't want this video to be too long. So let's just go into YouTube here real quick. And then here we go. So let's take a look at this one. And hopefully you can hear it. It starts out slow. So first, what's going on here? This is a song called "Godspeed You, Black Emperor" by the Dead Flag Blues, and this song is honestly super depressing, right? But let's just listen to it, and we'll get further on.
And the sewers are all muddy. The car is on fire, and there's no driver at the wheel. And the sewers are all muddied with 1,000 lonely suicides. And a dark wind blows.
Okay, you get the gist. It's pretty depressing. And it goes on like that for a while. Although it changes through something else. The first part, like, this is a song that's kind of interesting. It's just like 3 songs kind of connected together. Whatever. The first part of it, which is about 6 minutes long or so, is just goes on along with that. So let's look at this song, though, in a different context. So this is the exact same song.
We're trapped in the belly of this horrible machine. And the machine is bleeding to death. The sun has fallen down. And the billboards are all leering. And the flags are all dead. toppled in on themselves. Mothers clutching babies picked through the rubble and pulled out their hair. The skyline was beautiful on fire, all twisted metal stretching upwards, everything washed in a thin orange haze. I said, "Kiss me, you're beautiful. These are truly the last days." You grabbed my hand, and we fell into it, like a daydream or a fever.
Okay, whoops, I don't want that. Stop. Damn it.